chapter 2. Joshua chapter 2, starting in verse 1 and continuing. And Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, "Go, view the land, especially Jericho." And they went and they came into the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and lodged there. And it was told to the king of Jericho, "Behold, men of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land." Then the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, "Bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come to search out all the land." But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. And she said, "True, men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And when the gate was about to be closed at dark, the men went out. I do not know where the men went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them." But she had brought them up to the roof and hid them in the stalks of flax that she had laid in order on the roof. So the men pursued after them on the way to the Jordan, as far as the fords, and the gate was shut as soon as the pursuers had gone out. Let's stop there and let's understand what's going on and exactly what God is doing. Joshua has been commissioned to be the leader of the children of Israel. He is going to lead them into the promised land, and the first major city inside the promised land is Jericho. Stands to reason that you would take Jericho first. In fact, Jericho has a very strategic characteristic to it. You see, it sits on the main road in between the Jordan lowlands and the Judean lowlands and the Judean highlands. This is an important area because if there were to be any movement of troops or any supplies moving, it would have to come through this area. Very strategic to take it first to ensure future success. Joshua had already been there. Years and years ago, he and 11 others had went into the land. They had looked at it. They had determined what kind of land it was. And when they returned to Moses, only Caleb and Joshua said, "We can take it." The other 10, frightened by the size of the people, the enormity of the task at hand, said, "Oh, I don't know. They're big, they're bad. I think we should wait. I don't think we can do this." 10 of the 12 wimped out. Joshua decides that it would be best if he knew what they were getting into. He just wants to get a lay of the land again. I mean, it's been years. This time, instead of sending out 1 man from each tribe, he sends 2. It's a definite covert mission. In fact, we're not even told that the rest of Israel knows it's going on. And these 2 men go out to see what kind of information they can get. They do what is reasonable at that time. I'm sure on their way in, they're thinking, where can we stop and get the most information possible in the quickest amount of time? And they think of the culture, they think of society, and, well, let me ask you, in our society today, if you wanted to get the most information in the shortest amount of time, where would you go? Internet. That's a good answer, not the one I'm looking for, Debbie. Barbershop. Why the barbershop? Because guys hang out there and they share. I don't know myself. I have never been to a beauty parlor, but I hear women do kind of the same thing there. There are other segments of society that would probably go to the local pub or tavern or bar or whatever they call them in this area. You see, it's a place where you come, a lot of people make their way in and out, they share what's on their hearts and minds, and they leave. Well, in that day, they didn't have fancy barber shops and salons. They didn't have community events like that. The place where the most conversation would happen was the brothel. Hence, we find Rahab the prostitute. People are passing through fairly regularly. No one will suspect anything if a couple strangers coming through town stop off there. It is a perfect disguise. They find their way there. They speak with her. She does something almost unimaginable. She gets who they are and she hides them. She hides them in the flask that she's drying on her rooftop. Now, that doesn't sound like much. That doesn't add a whole lot to our story, or so we think, but it does allow us to constitute a timeline. Because you see, you don't dry flask every day of the year. There is a certain time of the year where it is cut and it's laid out to dry to be made useful later on. And that just so happens that it's in March and April, which coincides with spring. Now, that's not terribly important for us at this moment, but it will become important for us next week. So her early spring, she hides the men up on her roof in the midst of her drying flask, and at just about that time, the king shows up. Now, before you get all excited, ooh, king, big kingdom, we are talking about at this time in history, the Canaanite communities are really just city-states. They're small, little organizations, not well affiliated with others, kind of on their own, and we're probably talking just a couple square miles of territory. So don't think we're calling out the 100,000 battalions. The leader, which we would probably consider more of a mayor, is given the title of king. Word gets to him that there are spies from Israel coming. Oh, I failed to mention, most of the Canaanite city-states are vassals of Egypt. We all remember Egypt, right? Was the superpower of the day, where the children of Israel had just done something phenomenal to escape. Egypt knows of this little band's power. They understand why they were escaping, why they were looking for a new home. It was because of their God. And God had done some incredible things on behalf of the Israelites to allow them to go. The Egyptian army suffered huge losses. The Egyptian army suffered huge losses. This group was not someone to be trifled with. Since these city-states are under the care, under the watchful eye of Egypt, we can assume that each of the leaders of these states has heard of the Israelites. The king of Jericho shows up at Rahab's door and he inquires about the men. And something strange happens. She tells him, yes, there were two men that were here, but I had no idea of their identity or their ethnicity. They just came and they left. In fact, as the sun went down, when we were closing up the city to remain safe and secure, they took off. At that moment, Rahab had just committed treason against Jericho. This wasn't a little to do. She had sold out her country for these two men. What in the world was she thinking? How could one do such a thing? Fortunately, Scripture doesn't leave us hanging. It continues on, verses 8 and following, 8 to 14. Before the men lay down, she came up to them on the roof, and she said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you devoted to destruction. And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, He is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that as I have dealt kindly with you, you also will deal kindly with my father's house, and give me a sure sign that you will save alive my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death. And the men said to her, our life for yours, even to death. If you do not tell this business of ours, then the Lord gives us the land. We will deal kindly with you and faithfully with you. Did you hear it? Did you hear the reason she felt all right to become a traitor to her country, her land of Jericho? You see, these are the moments that just strike me with awe, strike me amazed. In verse 9, she tells them that she realizes who God is. She knows. She has heard the story of that amazing Exodus, where the sea dried up, they marched through on dry land, and as the soldiers chased them, it collapsed on them again. She heard it. She knew it to be true. Not only did she know it, the whole city knew it. And it didn't stop there. The cities just on the other side of the Jordan, just outside the promised land. They realized that they had been handed over to God. God was going to be in control of them, and He was going to place part of His people there. It had set panic across the city. Fear was growing in the hearts of each person. They suspected they were coming. And here are the two spies. They now know what's happening. And they were so worried about this day because they felt like, who can possibly fight against God? She proclaims her faith in that God in a way that would have been priceless even for the children of Israel. Right before she tells that to the spies, she had encouraged the king to take his men and chase down the spies whom she said ran off before the gates closed. She encouraged them to run as far down to the fords of the Jordan River. Now, it's important that they run all that way because you see, it's springtime. The weather's getting warmer. We kind of experienced a little bit of that this week, didn't we? We got all that wonderful snow on Wednesday. Wasn't that just... You know, I have to throw in a little bit of commentary here for a minute. I love Virginia snow because it comes and it's gone in like 3 days. That's just beautiful. I like that. It melted away because it got warm. Where does that snow go when it melts? To the rivers. What happens to the rivers? They swell, they rise, perhaps flash flooding, perhaps flooding. See, the same thing's happening here. The fords in the Jordan River are places where typically you might be able to cross. Water only come up to your waist. In other places, it is whoosh, white water river-like. So she's encouraging them to go all the way down where it would be possible for men to cross over easily, giving the spies an opportunity to go the other way. She then gives those details. She proclaims what she knows. She tells them that the men's hearts have melted because of the Israelites. You know, the one thing that I've learned over the 40 some odd years of my life? Fear is contagious. Have you ever noticed that? One person gets a little bit nervous. Person next to him starts to fidget. And if they think it's really bad, all of a sudden the room gets a little wound up and it spreads. See, it takes us back to God telling Joshua 4 times in the first chapter, only be strong and very courageous. You see, God already knew that the hearts of those in Canaan were melting. That he had handled all of it. The Israelites just had to do what he asked. Be strong, be courageous. It's yours for the taking. Now, the spies are getting confirmation of that from humans like them. Could it be that what God has said is real? That it's legitimate? That God knows what he's doing? While fear is contagious, bravery seldom is. It takes time. You need to work yourself up. You know, I know this because there was a time when I was a teenager, and we would go, a group of us would go to amusement parks. And at the time, they aren't very impressive now, but there were some pretty big roller coasters that I would have never ventured out on if it were just my mom, my dad, and myself. Why? It's steep. It's fast. I don't know that I can handle it. But you give me 3 friends who say they're going on it. Let's be real. Give me one friend and his date and the young lady I'm there with, and they all say they're going on it. Well, I can't let them know how nervous I am, can I? So you get in line, and the entire time you're in line, you say, I can't believe I'm doing this. I really don't want to be here. Surely someone's going to say they don't want to do this. And then you sit down in the seat, and it's like, well, I guess I'm in this for better or for worse. You never admit it, but you're sick the entire time. Courage is not contagious, but we put on a false front. And you know what? Sometimes that's enough. Rahab makes a deal with the spies. Because I've extended you this kindness to hide you out, and you'll be able to report back, and you will be able to give just a wonderful report to your leader. I ask you this favor. That when you come and you take possession of this city, that you will extend that kindness back to me and my family. That you will keep my mama and my daddy and all of that's theirs. You'll keep them alive, that they can continue to live out their days here. Verse 14, the spies set a little bit more of a standard. Our lives for yours, even to death. And I'm going to read it like it's written in the Hebrew. If y'all don't tell this business of ours, then the Lord gives us the land. We will deal kindly and faithfully with y'all. Because that you is plural. Because what they're saying is, if you don't say anything about us being here and spying out the land and taking it over, if you remain quiet, and your mama remains quiet, and your daddy remains quiet, if y'all remain quiet, we'll be good. Continuing in verse 15. Then she let them down by a rope through the window. For her house was built into the city wall, so that she lived in the wall. And she said to them, go to the hills, for the pursuers will encounter you, and hide there 3 days until the pursuers have returned. Then afterward you may go on your way. The men said to her, we will be guiltless with respect to this oath of yours that you have made us swear. Behold, when we come into the land, you shall tie this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and you shall gather into your house your father, your mother, your brothers, and all your father's household. Then if anyone goes out of the doors of your house into the street, his blood shall be on his own head, and we shall be guiltless. But if a hand is laid on anyone who is within your house, his blood shall be on our head. But if you tell this business of ours, then we shall be guiltless with respect to your oath that you have made us swear. And she said, according to your word, so be it. And then she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied the scarlet cord in her window. They departed and went out into the hills and remained there 3 days until the pursuers returned. And the pursuers searched all along the way and found nothing. Then the 2 men returned. They came down from the hills and passed over and came to Joshua the son of Nun and told him all that had happened to them. And they said to Joshua, truly the Lord has given all the land into our hands, and also all the inhabitants of the land melt away because of us. The arrangement's made, the pact is sealed. They will leave alone the home that has the scarlet cord when they come to take possession of the land. But first they will hide away for 3 days. And then they will finally return to their home, to their camp there at Shittim, and allow Joshua to know all that they know. There are so many things we can infer and imply from this last few verses. The sign of safety and security will be found in a scarlet cord. A deep red is what offers hope to Rahab and her family. An assurance that when they return, they shall be saved. But before that happens, they must go and hide in the hills, outside the city walls, in the hills, for 3 days. Three days before they return to their home to prepare for Joshua's second coming to Jericho. Again, we remind you that Joshua, in its purest literal sense, translated is deliverer. You see, the Old Testament always plays out with a few stumbles and hiccups along the way what Jesus accomplished in perfection and whole. The deliverer was coming, and those who had made a profession, understanding who the Lord is and what He has done, will be saved. It's the gospel before the gospel. So much going on. I don't even know what the inhabitants of Jericho would be called. The Jerichoites just doesn't sound right. The Jerichoans doesn't sound right. But they knew it was coming. They knew it was coming. They had feared this day. Why? Because their lives would be changed forever. One individual who probably lived in I don't even know how to describe it. Her home was in the wall that was supposed to give them security. Now, I don't know about you, but that isn't the good section of town. Because if you're going to get attacked, the wall's getting attacked first. She didn't live in the right section of town. She didn't have the most respectable, wonderful job. She wasn't being cared for by a loving husband. We know nothing if she had children. But she knew who God was. And that would be her salvation and her family's because she declared it. She had a faith and a strength that the Israelites constantly had to be reminded to have. We don't know at any point that God came to her and said, "Only be courageous and very strong." It's just who she was. But again and again He tells His children, be strong and courageous, be bold, trust in me. Great things can be accomplished. Today I ask you, have you had that experience with God that He comes first in your life? Before country. Rahab had no problem selling out Jericho because she knew God to be more. It wasn't very culturally appropriate for her, for they had their own gods. But they didn't possess that kind of power to topple kingdoms. She wasn't the best and the brightest, but she knew enough. And what she knew, she acted on. Church, have you acted? We are now 3 weeks into the new year. How have you acted for God and His glory? If you hadn't yet, we're going to give you the opportunity this morning. That perhaps you have never professed that kind of faith in God before. If you want to make that profession today, we're going to open up our service. We'll ask you to slide out, come down. We'll talk, we'll pray, and we'll see what God will do in your life. Perhaps it is an issue of salvation. Perhaps it's a place of service that you just don't know how to serve God or where to serve God. We're going to say the same thing. Slip on out, come on down, let's talk, let's pray, and let's see what God can do with those committed to serving and seeking Him first. As our musicians come, won't you search your heart and your mind and see what God is asking from you? Won't you stand as we continue our worship?